In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Welcome, friends, to Crime and Punishment, a legal podcast, not a political one. It is the official podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA, a criminal defense law firm in Orlando, Florida, the website for which is augustusinvictus.com. That is me, yours truly, the host of this program. We are simulcasting to YouTube, Twitch, DLive, Twitter, LinkedIn, I think Facebook, should be Facebook. We've got a newsletter. We've got viral style. And today, I'm not going to post those because I just don't have the time. I've got a lot of things to do. It's kind of the nature of running a law firm. Hard enough to log into my own YouTube here. So, today we're going to talk about some seriously grave things. The Chicago Tribune has rightly pointed out that we are going back to the Dark Ages. A cutting indictment of the right-wing lunatics out there trying to ban abortion, trying to impinge upon women's rights, trying to impinge upon the rights of persons to determine what sex they are through surgery and then have children as a man or as a woman. We now live in this enlightened age where you can do that. And it's not just technological capability, it's a legal right. And with this overturning of Roe v. Wade, as we discussed last week, well, that's on the chopping block. No pun intended. So we're going to read this article from Chicago Tribune. It is a very scary article. I would advise you not to have your children listen to this episode. I hope you are as concerned as I am. Chase says the sound is good. That's good to know. What a deeply concerning day. The headline of this article reads, Same-sex couples updating legal status after the Supreme Court's decision on abortion. This is from today, hot off the presses. Emails and phone calls from same-sex couples worried about the legal status of their marriages and keeping their children flooded Attorney Sidney Duncan's office within hours of the Supreme Court's decision eliminating the constitutional right to abortion. The ruling last week didn't directly affect the 2015 decision that paved the way for same-sex marriage, but, Duncan said, it was still a warning shot for families headed by same-sex parents who fear their rights could evaporate like those of people seeking to end a pregnancy. Like I said, scary days. Because you out there, you didn't stand up for the right of women to murder their own children. You didn't stand up for them, and now same-sex parents could be next. Their rights to sodomy, their rights to pervert children, to pretend that they're a family, to adopt children, their rights could evaporate next. Just like those of people seeking to end a pregnancy. Horrifying. Horrifying. And Justice Thomas is just fueling the fire. You would not believe what he said in his concurring opinion. We're going to find out, of course, and we're going to go straight to the source. We're going to go right to the fact checkers themselves so that we know that our information is accurate. We don't want to get anything off the internet that is not verified by blue check marks. So we're going to go to CNN. And the title of this is Clarence Thomas Calls on Supreme Court to Revisit Gay Marriage Decision. The gay marriage decision they're talking about is Obergefell v. Hodges. 2015 recognized the so-called right to gay marriage. And in his concurring opinion, the commentator on here mistakenly calls it a dissenting opinion. It's probably heat of the moment. That happens. Just an honest mistake. In his concurring opinion saying, yes, we should overturn Roe v. Wade, he says not only that, but we should go back and rethink this whole thing about gay marriage too, because obviously Roe v. Wade was ridiculous. It was not based on any legal precedent or any legal philosophy. It was purely political. It was outrageous. So was this 2015 decision about gay marriage. Outrageous. This justice on the Supreme Court is urging his colleagues to overturn gay marriage. And that's what this Chicago Tribune article is about. Let's hear what Justice Thomas said. Let's hear the commentary about it from the blue check marks, from the fact checkers, so that we know our information is accurate, and then we'll come back to the Chicago Tribune article.
So, Elliot, I want to read a little bit from Justice Samuel Alito. He says, we hold that Roe and Casey, which was the 1992 decision, must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the one on which the defenders of Roe and Casey now chiefly rely, due process clause of the 14th Amendment. Justice Alito saying it's not in the original text, therefore it does not exist. That has implications not just for abortion rights.
Any number of rights, and even though he sort of hints, and he did this in that first draft, that those other rights aren't on the chopping block. Look, the dissent from Justice Thomas makes very clear that there is a voice on the Supreme Court that is willing to go after, or at least address the questions of same-sex marriage or contraception or whatever. And it's the same general legal framework that would strike them down. So that's, point one. Point two is that right now, Justices Kavanaugh and Roberts in their concurrence made clear that maybe, we're not going to go all the way there yet. Well, that means that we're one justice away if one of them were to leave the court or change their mind or whatever else from those questions coming up. So I think, there isn't any more clarity today than there was yesterday, and we're sort of entering the legal Wild West here on any number of questions and not just privacy.
You say the legal Wild West. I want to bring Justice Snyder back into the conversation because Joan teed up this point that if it's okay to wipe out this precedent, or what about other precedents? And Jess, in the writings on this and the consents and concurring opinions, Clarence Thomas gets very plain, speaks very plain language about this, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting, John, is this opinion is 5-4, but we're essentially seeing a three-way split here as to how this Roe opinion could affect other rights that many Americans in this country take for granted, like the right to conception or the right to same-sex marriage, which was established by this court. So,
interesting that she talks about the right to conception. I think what she means, however, is the right to contraception, the right to prevent conception so that you don't have to have an abortion, right? But mistakes all over the place, which is, they're honest mistakes. And thank God for the fact checkers.
What we saw from Justice Alito is him assuring the public that this does not go beyond Roe. This is what Alito wrote. To ensure that our decision is not misunderstood or mischaracterized, we emphasize that our decision concerns the constitutional right to abortion and no other right. Nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt in precedents that do not concern abortion. And Justice Brett Kavanaugh also reiterated that in his concurrence. However, you noted that Justice Clarence Thomas actually was quite blunt about what he wants. And here's the quote from him. In future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell. Griswold, contraception, Lawrence saying that the state cannot criminally punish sodomy, and Obergefell, the right to same-sex marriage. So, John, we're seeing this conflict between the conservatives, Justice Thomas wanting to go much farther than maybe some of the others.
So, Steve Vladeck, if I wanted to challenge same-sex marriage, if I wanted to challenge the right to contraception, I'm either in court today or tomorrow, right? Thinking this court might give me, in a year or two, I'm before the Supreme Court?
So, John, Obviously, there's one step before that, which is we would need to see states, presumably red states, adopting laws that go after these precedents. But that's not a hypothetical. I mean, we know there are legislators in Mississippi and Idaho, for example, who want to introduce legislation to restrict abortion. And, John, Jessica read the line from Alito's opinion about how this is limited to abortion. Well, I think the dissent also has a pretty good response on this, which is that the analysis is not limited to abortion. The notion that the Constitution doesn't protect rights unless they're deeply rooted in our traditions, that's not limited to abortion. So what the joint dissent said, I think this is an important quote, either the mass of the majority's opinion is hypocrisy or additional constitutional rights are under threat. It's one or the other.
It's one or the other. It's one or the other. The dissent is right about that. Either Justice Alito and the other justices, the concurring justices, minus Clarence Thomas, of course, but either the majority are just engaged in pure hypocrisy, because you can't say, well, 50 years of this, was wrong and we have to overturn this and there was no real legal precedent and you have to have a right deeply ingrained in American history. You can't say that about abortion and not everything else. The right to bear arms, the right to freedom of speech, the right, quote unquote, to gay marriage or gays adopting children, the right to choose your sex. All of these things have the same analysis. The dissent is right about that. Segregation, vaccination, all of these rights are presumably subject to the same analysis. Was there a deeply entrenched right in American history to sodomy and gay marriage? Clarence Thomas specifically mentions Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell. These are three holy cows of the left. Of everybody, really, because everybody is on the left these days. But Griswold is one we've talked about before on this program. Contraception. The state can't tell a married couple about contraception. The state can't pass laws saying a man and woman, it's illegal for a man and wife to use contraception. That's insane. But see, the dissent here on the Supreme Court, they are pointing out the hypocrisy of the majority, and I fully agree. But they don't look in the mirror, of course, because how Griswold was sold was, you can't tell a married couple what to do in the bedroom. You can't tell them not to use contraception. State has no right to do that. Well, I think a lot of reasonable people would agree with that. However, that's clearly not how it turned out. That was never the point of challenging the contraception laws. Just like the dogma of, well, you can't stop a rape victim or an incest victim from having an abortion. That's monstrous. That's how it was sold. That's clearly not what the real agenda was. That is not how it turned out. It turned from these poor victims of rape and incest, or the mother's going to die in the delivery room. You have to have exceptions for these. It turned from that to any woman at any time, any female, any male now, because what's the difference? Under 18, over 18, don't have to tell your parents, don't have to tell your husband. Any female or person identifying as female or transsexual who is having an abortion, you can have it on demand. You can have as many as you want, anywhere, anytime, at any time in the pregnancy. That's what it became. That was always the true agenda. Griswold, same thing. You can't tell a married couple not to use contraception. Obviously, that's not how it turned out. You can buy Trojans in any store in America. or shoplift them. Not legally, of course. But you can get contraception anywhere, anytime. Anybody can do it. Under 18, over 18, male, female, identify as whatever. Contraception is as free as the air, although you have to pay for it. So the lie that this is about married couples minding their own business, that's how they get their foot in the door. Just like this lie about Lawrence. Well, the state has no right to tell married couples whether to have contraception. Likewise, in Lawrence, the state has no right to tell two consenting adult males that they are not allowed to engage in sodomy in the privacy of their own home. That is what was sold to the people. The state has no right to make these determinations for consenting adults. That's obviously not where it went. In the privacy of their own home. The point of gay pride parades is to make it exceedingly public. To commit overt sex acts in front of children and their parents take them there. That all began with Lawrence. And only Clarence Thomas is saying, it's about time we had a look at Lawrence. It's about time we revisited Griswold. And as for gay marriage, it's about time we revisited Obergefell. Because these were sold to us as one thing and turned out completely different. And by the way, they were sold to us by people who were completely hypocritical. Not judging on legal precedent, not judging on the deeply entrenched rights recognizable in all of American history. The dissent is right. The majority is absolutely being hypocritical in saying, oh, nothing else is subject to this analysis. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But if you want to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. And this is exactly what the left did when they gave us the gift of Roe v. Wade. And they gave us the gifts of Griswold and Lawrence and Obergefell. Oh, it's just two consenting adults in their home. State has no right to say anything about that. And next thing you know, you got 10-year-olds dancing in drag clubs getting tipped like a stripper. You've got hordes of boys cutting off their genitals to become women. You've got hordes of women trying to put artificial genitalia on themselves to become men. The world has gone mad. Only Clarence Thomas is saying, maybe we should relook at these things, because none of those are deeply entrenched rights recognizable in American history since the founding. Amazing that we had, 250 years of American history, and it was only 7 years ago that we figured out that gay marriage is a right, a constitutional right, that of course was intended by the Founding Fathers. Let's go back to the Chicago Tribune. I think we've heard enough from the fact checkers. Thank God for them. Let's also check the comments. I'm very bad about that. Somebody's Fed posting hard. I don't know who Richard's talking about. Certainly not me. Ave says not Jeffrey Epstein. 20 years. Ghislaine Maxwell got 20 years. Hey Augustus, glad to catch you live. Godspeed and have a great weekend. P.S. Bar prep sucks. Doesn't it? Doesn't it? Sorry to hear you're in bar prep, buddy. But good luck with the bar exam at the end of the month. Very cool. Very cool. And holler at me when you're past that hurdle. I'm going to put in my email address, so anybody taking the bar this month, holler at me whenever you're out of that hole. Everett. Ultimately, were the Dark Ages so bad? Exactly. We haven't gotten there in the article yet, but let's just take a look at that, right? I didn't realize until my conversion was a long time. It took 12 years before it actually took, but somewhere in there in the beginning, I discovered that the Catholics called it a Protestant Revolution. Protestant Reformation was something the Protestants called it. Ha! I had no idea. No idea. And when you look at who calls it the Dark Ages exactly, it's the people who hate Western civilization. That's who calls it the Dark Ages. We love the Enlightenment. We love Freemasonry. We love republicanism. We hate monarchy. We hate the Catholic Church. We hate chivalry, chivalric codes. We hate Western history. We hate Western warfare. We hate Western values. Those things where all of that was at its height, that was the Dark Ages. Post-Enlightenment, hence the contrast to the Dark Ages versus the Enlightenment. We live post-Enlightenment, thank God. These are the real values we should have. Equality, fraternity, liberty. So, let's go back to that Chicago Tribune article at long last. That has a lot of people scared. What does, right? But Duncan said it was still a warning shot for families headed by same-sex parents who fear their rights could evaporate like those of people seeking to end a pregnancy. Quote, that has a lot of people scared, and I think rightfully so, said Duncan, who specializes in representing members of the LGBTQ community at the Magic City Legal Center in Birmingham. Overturning a nearly 50-year-old precedent, the Supreme Court ruled in a Mississippi case that abortion wasn't protected by the Constitution, a decision likely to lead to bans in about half the states. Justice Samuel Alito said the ruling involved only the medical procedure, writing, "Nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion." That's what we heard earlier from the fact checkers. That line from Alito, well, this has nothing to do with anything outside of abortion. This only concerns abortion. Absolutely doesn't talk about gay rights or gay marriage or sodomy or contraception. No way. This only concerns abortion. But, continues the Chicago Tribune, conservative Justice Clarence Thomas called on his colleagues to reconsider cases that allowed same-sex marriage, gay sex, and contraception. The court's three most liberal members warned in their dissent that the ruling could be used to challenge other personal freedoms. Quote, either the mass of the majority's opinion is hypocrisy, or additional constitutional rights are under threat. It is one or the other, end quote. And as I said, that is dead on. Either this whole thing is hypocrisy or contraception, gay marriage, sodomy, gay adoption, segregation, all of these things are under threat. They're right about that. That prospect alarms some LGBTQ couples who worry about a return to a time when they lacked equal rights to married heterosexual couples under the law. Many, fearful that their marital status is in danger, are moving now to square away potential medical, parental, and estate issues. Let's talk about a comment I got. In fact, let's see if I can pull it up while we are talking. I mentioned last week, somebody was in the comments saying something about the explosion of non-white births in the wake of Roe v. Wade, as though that were an argument for maintaining that Supreme Court decision I then got this. Where notifications? I don't usually read comments. I don't read my notifications. I'm horrible at it. I don't even take the time to hire somebody to do it for me. I hate it. However, 2 of them broke through to me this week, and one of them was about this. Yep. Seeing the entire dissident right from practically everyone celebrating this news, that is, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, seeing the entire dissident right from practically everyone celebrating this news is utterly sickening. The fact that they call themselves white nationalists is laughable. I got notified when someone responded to that saying, yep, I can think of 2. Emperor Invictus, that's me, Augustus Invictus, and James Edwards. 2 clowns who claim to care about whites. Ouch! Ooh. God. Oh, right, I don't care. I'm glad to be in class with James Edwards, though. He is a good guy. Very cool guy. But I'll say this very pointedly. If your political movement is based upon the actual murder of children, I really don't care what race or sex or whatever, religion, I don't care what they are. If your movement is based on the actual murder of children in mass, then count me out. Just like Republicans, if being a Republican requires that I promote transsexuals like they do on Fox News or Twitter or the alt-right, count me out. I don't want anything to do with it. I really don't care about anything except the natural order. As I've said a million times on this program, I have no political opinions. All I care about is the reestablishment of the natural order upon the earth. So, this notion that we have to support this rogue Supreme Court and all the insanity that they have done in the past 50 years because birth rates are going to explode, that is what we call a non sequitur in formal logic. It is absolutely outside the argument. And again, if your entire argument rests upon something completely immoral and, like the Republicans saying we have to promote transsexualism, is something that you're just playing their game, then count me out. I really could not possibly care less about what anybody has to say. And besides, this is a program based on purely legal analysis. I have no political opinions, as I said. Harvard affirmative action. Gay rights cases are next up at the Supreme Court. This just in from Twitter as I was reading these notifications. The U.S. Supreme Court reshaped the legal landscape in dramatic ways in the past few months, and it may just be getting started. Here's what's up next for SCOTUS when a new term begins in October. Holy smokes. This Chicago Tribune article is so good, but next up for the Supreme Court, use of race in college admissions, free speech and gay rights, challenge to the Clean Water Act. Okay, well, I don't know about that, but the other stuff's pretty interesting, right? Let's see. Let's just go back to Chicago Tribune. Let's not get distracted by shiny objects here. Dawn Betts Green and wife Anna Green didn't waste time shoring up their legal paperwork after the decision. That is, the Dobbs decision. They've already visited a legal clinic for same-sex families to start the process of making a will. Quote, that way, if they blast us back to the dark ages again, we have legal protections for our relationships, end quote, said Betts Green, who works with an Alabama-based nonprofit that documents the history of LGBTQ people in the South. The Dark Ages. Blast us back to the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages were literally everything in human history up to the year 2015. At what point does American jurisprudence stop being based upon the mental illness of these people? These people. There is no legal reasoning in Obergefell. There is no legal reasoning in Brown v. Board of Education. No legal reasoning in Roe v. Wade, Griswold, Lawrence. There are selling points. There is propaganda. There is ideology. There is, you could even say, legal philosophy. If you buy legal positivism, you could make those arguments, but not legal reasoning, not legal precedent, not rights deeply entrenched in American history, going back to the founding, none of it. And yet, everything before 2015 is the Dark Ages. Here we go. Here we go. God, I love this article. As a white woman married to a black transgender man, Robin Reed of Minneapolis feels particularly vulnerable. A decision undermining same-sex marriage or interracial unions would completely upend Reed's life, which includes the couple's 3-month-old child. These poor people just want to be left alone by the tyrannical government that is giving freedom to places like Iraq and Afghanistan, but not America. Why can't we bomb freedom into the South? These poor people. That's one thing we haven't talked about, interracial unions. I mean, if abortion is on the table, actually there's no constitutional right to that. It's not part of American history going back to the founding. It's only 50 years old. What about interracial unions? We talked about Brown v. Board. We talked about desegregation even. What about interracial unions? There were laws about that in every state forever. Now it's constitutional right. But if the same analysis applies, that a right has to be deeply entrenched in American history, recognizable, going all the way back to the founding, then aren't interracial unions on the table as well? Again, as the dissent pointed out, it's either just absolute hypocrisy or interracial unions are on the chopping block as well. They're up in the air now. That analysis applies to everything. Everything's going back to the states, according to the Dobbs opinion. This white woman married to a black transgender man, they have a 3-month-old child together. And they are the ones claiming we're about to go back to the Dark Ages, when an arrangement like that, masquerading as a family, was illegal. Those were the Dark Ages. We live in the Enlightenment now. God almighty. Thank God this is a legal program and not a political one, or people might have things to say. I have no expectation that anything about my marriage is safe, said Reed. Reed's employer, Sarah Briner of the Briner Law Firm, is setting up seminars in both the Twin Cities and the Atlanta area to help same-sex couples navigate potential legal needs after the court's decision. Briner said helping people remain calm about the future is part of her job these days. Quote, "We don't know what might happen, and that's the problem," Briner said. And a sign of what could come, the state of Alabama already has cited the abortion ruling and asking a federal appeals court to let it enforce a new state law that makes it a felony for doctors to prescribe puberty blockers and hormones to trans people under age 19. Golly. Pure radicalism. Absolutely radical. That is casting us back in the Dark Ages, pre-2015. Making it a felony to give kids under 19 puberty blockers to help them transition to a different sex. A felony. Can you imagine that? It's madness. The horror. The decision giving states the power to restrict abortion means states should also be able to ban medical treatments for transgender youth, the state of Alabama claimed. Golly! Can you believe what is going on in the South? It's the Civil War all over again. Any attempt to undo gay marriage would begin with a lawsuit. And any possible rollback is years away since no major legal threat is on the horizon, said Catherine Oakley, senior counsel and state legislative director with the Washington-based Human Rights Campaign, an LGBTQ advocacy organization. Well, that is accurate. Things typically take years to get to the Supreme Court. No one has filed any lawsuit about gay marriage recently, to my knowledge. So even if they filed it today, it would still be several years down the road. And by that time, Trump could be president again, and then he could appoint some more Supreme Court justices. Who knows? But it's not going anywhere today. But as the article points out, homosexual couples certainly should be afraid that their rights, quote-unquote rights, will evaporate just like those seeking to murder their children. This is definitely a scary moment and people are nervous. But people's marriages are still safe, Oakley said. Now, why the word marriages is not put in air quotes, I don't know, but it's the Chicago Tribune. It's probably just a typographical error. Although the threat to same-sex couples feels particularly acute in conservative states, Oakley said she's heard of people all over the country in recent days seeking second-parent adoptions, which protect a family by having the names of both adoptive parents on the birth certificate. People also are completing medical directives in case one spouse is incapacitated and doing general estate planning, she said. Yeah. I mean, that's just plain law, right? You don't have to be married to someone to make them your personal representative. You don't have to be married to someone to make them your representative in the event that you are in a coma and can't make decisions about your medical treatment on your own. You don't have to be married for that. People appoint their parents, their children, their spouses, but also friends. You can appoint anyone you want. Legal disclaimer, this varies state by state. Contact a lawyer to make your own advanced medical directive. Do not take this as legal advice. That's also a bit of an exaggeration. Can't really appoint anyone you want. Typically, they have to be over 18. They have to be in the same state. They have to be willing to act as your representative. So there are qualifications. Do not take this as legal advice. This program is for entertainment purposes only. But you don't have to be in a homosexual quote-unquote marriage in order to make somebody your representative. I think that's pretty hard and fast anywhere you go. So this notion that we have to recognize these unions as marriages because they won't be able to help each other in a coma situation is just absurd. It's absurd. And again, that's how it's sold to you. These poor people in these unions, they're not given the same rights as heterosexual couples. It's just insulting. What does the state have to say about a husband and a husband coming together and pulling the plug if one of them gets in a coma? That's not what it's about at all. In fact, eugenic laws about marriage go back thousands of years, perhaps most famously going back to Caesar Augustus. Marriage was promoted by the government, subsidized, given governmental benefits so that they could produce natural-born children that would strengthen the republic or the nation, wherever you happen to be. Now, certainly a white woman with a black transgender man having a 3-month-old child, well, they had a child somehow, right? And certainly with homosexual marriages being allowed to adopt children willy-nilly, as long as they go through the right bureaucratic red tape, well, maybe that means we have a future for this country. And what do declining birth rates mean in immigration, and who cares? Because transsexual, homosexual couples can adopt at will, and the world will keep turning. It's pure insanity. And again, has nothing whatsoever to do with law. Obviously, this is purely ideological. And the benefit of being a lawyer on crime and punishment is that we have absolutely no political opinions whatsoever. We only analyze things based on the law. Just like Clarence Thomas. I believe this name is pronounced Ryan. Ryan Saba's law firm in Hollywood, Florida, is offering free second-parent adoptions, which are similar to step-parent adoptions, for qualified same-sex couples to help ease some of the stress caused by the possible ripple effects of the abortion decision. I've got to call Miss Saba because that is just brilliant advertising. Just amazing. We're offering free adoptions. Get it in the Chicago Tribune. Make it national news. That's brilliant marketing. Hats off. We realized last week, says Miss Saba, we realized last week when the ruling came out, we needed to do something, said Saba of the Upgrade Lawyers in Hollywood, Florida. A judge in Broward County, which is where Hollywood, Florida is, plans to have a special day in August to finalize all the adoptions at once, Saba said. Thank God for the progressiveness of Broward County, Florida. If nothing else, completing the process should give nervous families more security, she said. If gay marriage goes away, we don't really know what's going to happen, she said. It's better to be on the safe side. There's a doctrine in Catholic law where if you have something illegitimate at some point in the line, well, everything else becomes illegitimate after that. Like, if you have somebody who is not actually ordained a priest, or if an ordained priest did a baptism just plain wrong, like left out the Trinity or some other super significant part of the baptism, the rite, that person's not really baptized. They go on to do something like get married, right? That marriage is not valid, and so on and so forth. It has these effects forever, going back to that original transgression of the law. So if gay marriage does go away, if Obergefell is overturned, and this farcical right evaporates, like the quote-unquote right to abortion, then wouldn't same-sex adoptions also go away like that? You wouldn't even have to say it. It would be over. So hurrying up. Let's do free second-parent adoptions. Let's finalize all the paperwork for these adoptions for gay couples. It's ridiculous, because once all that's overturned, the entire scheme is over. It's game over. But, like I said, amazing marketing. Hats off. Zig the Infernal says, "Hey Augustus, happy Freedom Month." Yeah! Happy Freedom Month. 4th of July coming up on Monday. God bless America. 2 years ago today, I was in jail. I celebrated July 4th in jail. I will never in my life forget that. School notified me that my son was being taught about July 4th, Independence Day, freedom. He's 5, for God's sake, and my first thought is I have to deprogram him. have never spoken about politics or anything like that with my son. I was trying not to, but schools, they just won't leave it alone. For instance, my son, not that son, but my teenage son, is interning with me for the summer, and drop him off at the library for something, come back to get him. He points out to me that the teenager section there has a section on LGBTQ propaganda. Kids are not safe anywhere. Anyway, happy Freedom Month to you as well, Zig. God bless America. God bless Independence Day. Thank God we overthrew the monarchy and established this free country with the highest incarceration rate in the world, where homosexual, transsexual couples are allowed to adopt children and pretend they're real families, where women can be flown by Tesla or Google or Facebook or whoever else to a different state to murder their child and call it a medical procedure, and be on paid vacation for it. Freest country in the world. Coach Alpha Elite says hearing POTUS 45 will announce his 2024 run on July 4th. This is MAGA month, though. I don't know where you heard that. I didn't hear that, but I guess you've heard it here first, everybody. Wow, good for him. I hope he does, because that would certainly liven things up. Not Jeffrey Epstein says, glad you're with us these days. I tell you what, not Jeffrey Epstein, I'm also glad. Every day I do my gratitude exercises and thank God that I can see the sky and the sun and hear birds. You hopefully will never understand what isolation is like. God bless America. That's the end of the article. I think we're done for the day. Y'all have fun at your barbecues, and we'll see you next week.